They stopped respecting you the moment you became too available. Not because you weren't valuable, but because you were always there. Always replying. Always explaining. Always showing up, always proving. And when something is always available, it becomes ordinary. Ordinary things are not protected. They are not chased. They are not feared. They are not respected. They're used. Now imagine this. One day, you stop. No dramatic announcement. No emotional goodbye. No passive-aggressive status updates. You simply disappear for 30 days. No unnecessary texts. No posting. No defending yourself. No chasing. No reacting. Just silence. What happens next will shock you. But not for the reasons you think. Because this isn't about making people miss you. This is about discovering what remains when the noise is gone. This is about power. And power grows in silence. Welcome to Stoic Pulse. Most people believe they are free. Free to speak. Free to move. Free to live. But they are trapped. Trapped by notifications. Trapped by expectations. Trapped by the need to respond. Trapped by the fear of being forgotten. Look at your phone. How many times do you check it per hour? Not because something urgent happened, but because your brain craves stimulation. You don't fear being alone. You fear being irrelevant. And relevance is the new addiction. The modern world has trained you to stay visible. Post your thoughts. Post your meals. Post your opinions. Post your emotions. Post your struggles. Post your wins. Be seen. Be validated. Be acknowledged. And if you're not seen, you feel like you don't exist. This is the invisible prison. But here's the paradox. The more visible you are, the less powerful you become. Because visibility creates familiarity. Familiarity creates predictability. Predictability eliminates mystery. And mystery fuels respect. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet wrote his deepest thoughts privately, never seeking applause. He understood something most modern men do not. Power does not need witnesses. Power needs discipline. When you disappear for 30 days, you break the cycle of performance. You stop performing for the world. And you begin confronting yourself. That confrontation is uncomfortable. Because when the noise fades, your insecurities speak louder. Week 1. Withdrawal. Day 1. You decide. No unnecessary communication. No mindless scrolling. No chasing. At first, it feels empowering. You feel in control. But by day 3, something shifts. Your fingers instinctively reach for your phone. You wonder who texted. You wonder who noticed your silence. You feel the urge to post something. Anything. Not because you need to, but because you want to be remembered. This is withdrawal. You are not addicted to people. You are addicted to reaction. Reaction makes you feel significant. When you remove access to yourself, you also remove your access to validation. And now, you must sit with yourself. Silence reveals truths noise was hiding. Maybe you weren't busy. Maybe you were avoiding stillness. Maybe you weren't social. Maybe you were afraid of being alone with your thoughts. The Greek Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that external things are not within our control, only our responses are. During week 1, you realize something brutal. You were not in control. Your impulses were every urge to check, every urge to reply instantly, every urge to defend yourself. You thought it was personality. It was compulsion. By day 7, the discomfort peaks. You feel invisible. And that's when most people quit. Because invisibility feels like death to the ego, but if you endure, something powerful begins. Week 2. Clarity. Day 10. The silence starts feeling different. Less threatening. Less heavy. You wake up and don't immediately reach for your phone. You sit with your thoughts. You begin observing your own patterns. You notice how often you used to over-explain, how often you tried to convince, how often you tolerated disrespect just to keep peace. Distance creates perspective, and perspective creates power. You begin seeing relationships clearly. Who only contacted you when they needed something? Who disappeared when you stopped initiating? Who respected your space? The Roman philosopher Seneca once wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. During week 2, imagination fades. Reality sharpens. You realize, you were overestimating your importance in some lives, and underestimating your value in others. You begin asking deeper questions. Why did I tolerate that? Why did I respond to disrespect? Why did I fear losing people who barely valued me? Silence, answers, and the answers are not comfortable, but they are liberating. You start training, reading, planning, building, not for attention, but because you finally have uninterrupted focus. Focus is rare, and rare things are powerful. Week 3, shifting energy. Around day 18, something unexpected happens. You stop thinking about whether they noticed. You stop imagining their reactions. You stop rehearsing what you'll say when you return, because you no longer care. And that indifference, that's the shift. Your energy changes. You walk slower. You speak less. You observe more. You respond instead of react. And here's what's fascinating. Even in silence, people feel it. Someone sends a message. Hey, you've been quiet. Another. Everything okay? Another. Long time no hear. Not because you begged for attention, but because absence creates contrast. When you were always there, you blended into the background. Now you stand out, without saying a word. This is psychological gravity. When you stop orbiting others, they begin orbiting you. Not all but the right ones. Week 4. DETACHMENT. Day 24. You realize something profound. You don't need the applause anymore. You don't need to be seen to feel secure. You don't need immediate replies to feel valued. You are grounded. And grounding is dangerous. In the best way, because grounded people cannot be manipulated easily. They cannot be rushed. They cannot be guilt-tripped. They cannot be emotionally hijacked. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." During these 30 days, you discovered your why, and it wasn't attention. It was self-mastery. You understand now. Disappearing wasn't about them. It was about reclaiming yourself from distraction. The return. Day 30. You don't announce your comeback. You simply move differently. You post less. You talk less. You tolerate less. Your presence feels heavier, because it is no longer scattered. It is concentrated. People notice, not because you tried to impress, but because restraint is rare, and rare is respected. You don't chase conversations. You don't overshare plans. You don't react emotionally. You listen, and silence, now, is not awkward. It is intentional. Disappearing for 30 days will not magically fix your life. It will not guarantee people chase you. It will not make everyone respect you. But it will reveal who you are without noise, who values you without reminders, who you can become without distraction. The world trains you to broadcast, but power grows in privacy. If you can endure 30 days of silence, you will discover a version of yourself that does not beg to be seen, and that version is untouchable. The scarcity effect. Human beings are wired to chase what feels scarce, not what feels available. If water flows endlessly from a tap, you waste it. If water becomes limited, you protect it. Attention works the same way. When you are always present, always replying, always explaining, always initiating, you remove scarcity. And when scarcity disappears, so does perceived value. This is not cruelty. This is psychology. People do not consciously decide to undervalue you. Their brain simply adapts to constant access. When you disappear for 30 days, something interesting happens inside their mind. Their certainty about you dissolves. They can no longer predict your behavior. They can no longer rely on your immediate availability. And uncertainty creates attention. The mind begins asking questions. Why? Did he pull back? Is he focused on something? Did I misjudge him? Is he leveling up? When you were present every day, there was no mystery. Now there is narrative. And narrative is powerful. Because when you say nothing, people create stories, and most of those stories elevate you, not because you tried to manipulate them, but because silence feels intentional. Scarcity creates perceived depth, but remember this. If you disappear and remain emotionally reactive internally, you are not scarce, you are hiding. True scarcity is calm. True scarcity is disciplined. True scarcity is detached. Attachment and emotional dependency. Most people are not addicted to love. They're addicted to reassurance. Reassurance that they matter. Reassurance that they are wanted. Reassurance that they are not forgotten. When you disappear, you remove reassurance, and that triggers attachment systems, both theirs and yours. If someone was securely attached, they will respect your space. If someone was anxiously attached, they may panic. If someone was avoidant, they may pretend not to care, but still monitor silently. But here is the real test. Your attachment. When you disappear for 30 days, your nervous system begins detoxing from emotional dependency. No constant dopamine from notifications. No constant validation. No constant micro rewards from attention. At first, it feels empty. Then it feels peaceful. Then it feels powerful. You begin to understand something critical. You are outsourcing emotional stability to other people. And outsourcing stability makes you fragile. When someone didn't reply fast enough, your mood shifted. When someone pulled back, you felt threatened. When someone criticized you, you reacted defensively. That is dependency. During these 30 days, you reclaim regulation. You become the source of your own stability. And once that happens, you are no longer easily manipulated. Because manipulation only works on emotional hunger. If you are not hungry, you cannot be baited. The dominance shift. Every interaction has a subtle power dynamic. Who initiates? Who reacts? Who explains? Who apologizes? Who seeks reassurance? When you are constantly available, you unconsciously position yourself lower in the hierarchy. Not because you are weak, but because you are always responding. Response energy is reactive energy. Disappearing flips the dynamic. You stop chasing. You stop initiating. You stop over-investing. And now, others must decide whether to step forward. This reveals truth. Some people only valued you when you provided emotional labor. Some only valued you when you entertained them. Some only valued you when you validated them. When you remove those services, the illusion dissolves. And here is where many men fail. They disappear expecting dramatic pursuit. That expectation is still ego-driven. True power is indifference to outcome. You disappear not to test them, but to build yourself. If they step forward with respect, good. If they disappear, clarity. Either way, you win. Because your energy is no longer being drained. Dominance is not aggression. Dominance is self-control. And self-control is intimidating in a world addicted to impulse. The inner war. Around day 20, you will face your greatest enemy. Not loneliness, not boredom. Your mind. Your mind will whisper, post something. Check their profile. Just send one message. What if they forget you? What if you lose them? This is the ego fighting extinction. The ego survives on attention. Without attention, it feels like it is dying. But the death is necessary. Because beyond the ego, there is clarity. You begin separating what you want from what your ego wants. You begin asking, do I actually miss them? Or do I miss feeling wanted? Do I actually care? Or do I fear losing status? Silence forces honesty, and honesty reshapes identity. You realize that many of your past reactions were ego defense mechanisms. Over-explaining, over-texting, over-sharing, over-apologizing, all attempts to control perception. But during these 30 days, you stop managing perception. You start mastering presence. Presence does not beg. Presence does not chase. Presence does not panic. Presence simply is physical transformation arc. Disappearance without growth is just absence. But disappearance with discipline becomes transformation. While you are silent externally, you build internally. Wake up earlier. Train harder. Eat cleaner. Read daily. Remove alcohol. Remove late night scrolling. Remove distractions. Each small discipline compounds. By day 25, your body feels sharper. Your posture changes. Your voice slows. Your movements become intentional. Confidence is not a mindset trick. It is accumulated evidence. Evidence that you kept promises to yourself. And when you return after 30 days, people sense it not because you announce it but because discipline alters energy. You are less jittery, less reactive, less eager. You radiate control. And control attracts respect. Financial and focus upgrade. Attention is currency. And most people waste it daily. When you reclaim your attention for 30 days, you gain hours. Hours to learn. Hours to build. Hours to strategize. Maybe you start studying markets. Maybe you build a side skill. Maybe you map long-term goals. Most people never progress because they are constantly interrupted. You remove interruption. Focus deepens. And deep focus creates leverage. When you return, your mind feels structured. You are no longer reacting to life. You are designing energy when you return. After 30 days, you no longer feel the urge to announce yourself. You simply show up differently. And the difference is subtle but undeniable. You speak less. But your words carry weight. You listen more. And people reveal themselves. You don't rush to reply. You respond when you choose. You don't argue. You disengage. And here is the real shift. You are no longer afraid of losing people. Because you survived losing access to them. Fearlessness changes posture. And posture changes perception. Disappearing for 30 days is not about revenge. It is not about ego games. It is not about manipulation. It is about detox. Detox from noise. Detox from validation. Detox from emotional dependency. And when the detox is complete, you are lighter, sharper, calmer, harder to control, harder to provoke, harder to replace. Because you are no longer chasing visibility. You are building gravity. And gravity does not chase. It attracts. When you disappear in romantic dynamics, everything changes. Not because love disappears, but because uncertainty enters the equation. Most attraction fades due to overexposure. Constant texting. Constant reassurance. Constant emotional availability. You think you're showing effort. But what you're actually doing is removing tension. And tension fuels attraction. When you disappear calmly for 30 days, 3 things happen. First, emotional reset. The emotional pattern breaks. They can no longer predict your timing. No longer anticipate your good morning texts. No longer rely on your emotional labor. Second, curiosity spike. The human brain hates incomplete patterns. You became an unfinished sentence, and unfinished sentences demand attention. Third, respect recalibration. If they valued you, your absence magnifies it. If they didn't value you, your absence exposes it. Either way, clarity wins. But here is the most important truth. If you disappear to provoke jealousy, you lose. If you disappear to manipulate emotion, you lose. If you disappear to regain control over someone, you lose, because that mindset is still reactive. True detachment is internal. You are not trying to make them feel something. You are rebuilding yourself. And ironically, that is what often reignites attraction. Not the silence, but the growth behind the silence. Watch what happens in your friend group when you stop initiating. Some friendships dissolve, and that hurts, but it also reveals truth. Many friendships are momentum-based. They survive on convenience. When you remove convenience, only intentional bonds remain. You begin noticing who checks in, who respects your space, who only calls when bored, who only reaches out when they need something. This is not bitterness, this is awareness. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that we should focus only on what is within our control. You cannot control loyalty. You cannot control effort. You cannot control how others value you. But you can control access. And access is a privilege. By day 30, your social circle may feel smaller, but it will feel cleaner, less noise, less drama, less forced energy. Quality replaces quantity, and peace replaces pressure. Shadow work, meeting yourself. Somewhere between day 15 and day 25. You will meet a version of yourself you've been avoiding. Your shadow. The insecurities you masked with humor. The fear you covered with confidence. The jealousy you disguised as indifference. The validation you pretended not to need. When you disappear from the world, there is nowhere left to hide. You will confront. Why do I need attention? Why do I fear being forgotten? Why do I over-explain myself? Why do I chase approval? These questions are uncomfortable. But discomfort is growth. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that external praise meant nothing compared to internal integrity. You begin building integrity. Integrity means your actions align with your values, even when no one is watching. Especially when no one is watching. This is the real transformation, not external reactions. Internal alignment. Now let's break it down clearly. If someone watching this wants to execute the 30-day disappearance correctly, here is the blueprint. Week 1, Digital Discipline. Remove non-essential notifications. No impulsive posting. No checking who viewed your story. Limit texting to necessary communication only. Start journaling daily. Goal. Break reaction patterns. Week 2, Physical foundation. Train 4 to 5 times per week. Fix sleep schedule. Improve diet. Walk daily without headphones. Read 20 minutes per day. Goal. Build internal stability. Week 3, Mental expansion. Study something financially useful. Map long-term goals. Eliminate one toxic habit. Practice controlled silence in conversations. Goal. Increase depth. Week 4, Strategic return preparation. Refine wardrobe. Refine posture. Refine speech pace. Reduce filler words. Observe more than you speak. Goal. Controlled presence. By day 30, you are not the same person, not because people changed, but because you did. Most people cannot complete 30 days. Why? Because Modern life is engineered to keep you stimulated. Apps compete for your attention. People compete for your reaction. Algorithms compete for your emotion. Stillness feels like withdrawal. Silence feels like invisibility. And invisibility threatens ego. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche spoke about the necessity of becoming who you truly are, beyond societal expectation. But becoming who you are requires detachment from who you were performing as. Performance is exhausting. Presence is powerful. When you disappear, you stop performing. And many people are addicted to performance. That is why they fail. The resurrection energy when you re-enter space is after 30 days. Do not overcompensate. Do not overshare. Do not explain your silence. Do not announce your growth. Let them feel it. Let them notice the change in your body language. Let them notice the calm in your tone. Let them notice the reduction in neediness. Silence is your armor. Stillness is your weapon. You are no longer seeking to be chosen. You are choosing, and that shift is magnetic. Disappear. Not because you are hurt. Not because you are angry. Not because you want revenge. Disappear because you refuse to be ordinary. Disappear because you are done chasing noise. Disappear because you are building something that requires silence. For 30 days, let the world wonder. While you work, let the weak overexpose themselves. While you discipline yourself, let the desperate beg for attention. While you build gravity, and when you return, return. Unrecognizable. Calmer, sharper, grounded, unbothered. Because the greatest power move is becoming so internally stable that external validation becomes irrelevant. Disappear for 30 days. Watch what happens. But more importantly, watch what happens to you. This is Stoic Pulse, and silence is power. The night you almost broke. It's day 17. No one knows what you are building. No one sees the early mornings. No one sees the discipline. No one applauds the restraint. And tonight, you almost break. You pick up your phone. You open the app. You hover over their profile you want to check. Just once. Not to text. Just to look. Just to see if they noticed. Just to confirm you still matter. And that is the moment, the real battle, because disappearing is not hard when you feel strong. It is hard when you feel forgotten. Your mind whispers, what if they moved on? What if they don't care? What if you're not missed? And here is the brutal truth. They might not miss you. Not yet. Not in the dramatic way your ego hopes. And that hurts. Because the ego wants proof of importance. But this challenge was never about proof. It was about independence. So you put the phone down. Not dramatically. Not heroically, quietly. And in that quiet decision, you win. Not over them. Over yourself. And that victory is invisible, but it rewires you. The ego survives on 3 things: recognition, reaction, reassurance. For 17 days, you have fed it nothing, so it panics. It tries new strategies. It reminds you of past memories. It replays conversations. It invents scenarios where you were wrong. It tries to provoke guilt. It tries to provoke fear. This is ego collapse. Most people never experience it because they constantly distract themselves. But you stayed. You stayed in silence, and now you see clearly how often you spoke just to be heard. How often you joked just to be liked. How often you agreed just to avoid rejection. The old version of you was negotiating for acceptance. The new version does not negotiate, and when the ego finally exhausts itself, there is space. Space for something stronger. Identity without performance. The loneliness phase. Somewhere around day 21, loneliness hits differently. Not dramatic sadness. Just a quiet emptiness. You realize how much of your time used to be filled with noise, group chats, scrolling, checking, replying. Now there is space. Too much space. And in that space, you feel small. This is the part no one talks about. Growth feels isolating, because you are separating from your previous self, and anything unfamiliar feels lonely. But loneliness is not always absence of people. Sometimes it is the presence of transition. You are between identities. Not who you were, not fully who you will become. This in-between stage feels unstable, but it is necessary. Every transformation has a void phase, a cocoon phase, a silent construction phase, and the world rarely sees what is built in silence. Then something subtle changes. You wake up one morning, and you don't feel the urge to check, not because you're forcing discipline, but because the desire faded. That's when you realize, you are not pretending anymore, you are detaching. You look in the mirror. Your posture is different. Your eyes look calmer. Your face carries less tension. You walk slower. You think before speaking. You pause before reacting. This is power, not loud power. Quiet power, the kind that doesn't demand attention, the kind that commands it. And then, it happens. A message. Simple. Hey, or maybe, you've been quiet. Or maybe nothing dramatic at all, just a subtle re-entry attempt. Now here is the test. Do you rush? Do you over-explain? Do you unload your growth story? Do you act cold to appear strong? No, you respond normally, calm, measured, unbothered, because the 30 days were not a strategy. They were evolution, and evolution does not perform. If they ask where you've been, you say, focused. Nothing more. Mystery is maintained through brevity. You don't owe detailed explanations for self-improvement at the end of the 30 days. The biggest surprise isn't how others treat you. It's how you treat yourself. You stop tolerating disrespect internally. You stop chasing people who hesitate. You stop explaining your value to those committed to misunderstanding you. You become selective with time, selective with energy, selective with access, because now you understand something deeply. Attention is life force, and where you direct it determines who you become. The old you needed validation. The new you values peace. The old you feared silence. The new you uses silence. The old you chased. The new you attracts. The old you reacted. The new you chooses. And once you experience this level of internal control, you cannot go back, because you've tasted stability. You've felt what it's like to not panic, to not overthink, to not spiral. You've proven to yourself that you can survive being unseen, and that realization destroys insecurity. Because insecurity is rooted in fear of invisibility. Now you know, even if no one watches, you will still build. Even if no one claps, you will still improve. Even if no one notices, you will still evolve. That is self-leadership. Disappear for 30 days, and watch what happens. Watch how the noise fades. Watch how your mind fights. Watch how your ego resists. Watch how your habits surface. Watch how clarity sharpens. Watch how respect recalibrates. But most importantly, watch how you change. Because the world does no true desperation. It responds to gravity. Gravity is built in silence. Power is built in privacy. Respect is built through restraint. And transformation is built through repetition. 30 days of silence can do what 30 years of noise never could. Not because silence is magic, but because silence removes distraction. And without distraction, you meet truth, meet your weakness, meet your insecurity, meet your potential. And once you meet your potential, You can never pretend you don't see it disappear. Not to manipulate, not to punish, not to control, disappear to rebuild. Then return, not louder, stronger, not colder, calmer, not distant, disciplined. This is Stoic pulse, and the quiet man is never weak. He is calculating, grounded, unshaken, and when he moves, he moves with intention. Disappear for 30 days, watch what happens, but remember, the greatest transformation will be invisible to everyone except you.